everybody, this is Brian and we are Press for Truth, and today we are going to talk about the carbon tax, the carbon price, and or what sane people will call the carbon scam. So today, to start this off, I am actually going to use a little video by a man that you all know well, and we'll start it really quick right here.
If you've retired, you don't have anything to worry about. It's the third time I've said that. I'll probably say it 3 more times. See, in my line of work, you got to keep repeating things over and over and over again for the truth to sink in, to kind of catapult the propaganda.
Funniest part about that is people are actually clapping for whatever reason, I don't know, and let's see how this actually works in the real world.
I'm just going to keep on repeating what I continue to repeat, that putting a price on carbon pollution makes good business sense. It's going to create good jobs, it's going to help create a clean growth economy, and it's going to ensure a better future for our kids.
Absolute lying. Creating jobs, I'm not sure how that does that. Generating a massive amount of tax revenue from the biggest wasters of money on the planet doesn't create jobs. So we'll see. Now, as we go forward, I could make a 9-hour video on the climate gate, climate change, the carbon tax scandals that have gone on, whether it's been falsified data, changed data, manipulated data, it's endless. Literally, they actually went back in time, change data to be lower temperatures, so the temperatures that are coming out now will actually look way hotter because it's all about, remember, keeping everything under 2 degrees change, and of course meeting our targets. What those targets are, they're just randomly picked out of the air, and that is the basis of literally taxing you into oblivion. Now, most of this is based on the IPCC. The IPCC was actually founded by a socialist named Maurice Strong, who was an energy magnate, billionaire, and everything in between. And people should actually realize who and what the IPCC is before they move forward. Carbon dioxide levels rose at record pace for 2nd straight year. Fantastic. This is the NOAA, who has also been caught lying many times over the years, just like the IPCC. And we know that there's a lot of controversy now about, the budgets being cut for the EPA and the NOAA and NASA and whatnot. I'm not overly concerned about whether the budgets are cut or not. It's more about the lying component of the NOAA and NASA and what we always hear about this 97% consensus, which is not actually a consensus. Most of the people actually inside NASA and a lot of people in the EPA and NOAA are coming forward now and letting us know that most of this is a falsehood. So we're always told that the EPA is this bastion of truth, when in reality they're actually colluding with a company called Monsanto. Monsanto, in the world of green, has actually been named one of the top green companies in the U.S. in 2016. Up there with Slavery Masters, Nike, and a bunch of other ones, Biogen, a few other people. So Johnson & Johnson, we all know that they make lots of big opioids and pharmaceuticals that we've covered. And number 12 is Monsanto. We have Apple, who's chewing up the landscape and doing a lot of things for data centers. So we're glad that they made it into that realm. And the words that they're always using, of course, Monsanto is top companies in corporate sustainability and environmental impact. And we always see that the price of carbon per ton or per millions of pounds, whatever it is, they want to price it at, but the reality is Monsanto sales just keep going up and up and up. This is only to 2012. Lord knows where this is, and that's not, this is just the USA. We're talking globally, this is a huge problem. Now, of course, for governments who are invested in these types of companies, this is a nice tidy profit, so they want to keep that going. That's the reason why they don't talk about Monsanto at all. So it's never really about actually telling the truth. These are what these guys are always talking about here, and this is called the Green Agenda, and they really come to the point where they're telling us some of these beautiful quotes here for some of these guys. It doesn't even matter what is true. It only matters what people believe is true. An overrepresentation of the facts. The models are convenient fictions that provide something very useful. What's very useful to governments is promoting higher taxes. And they get these guys, you can see here, it's always the same people. Here's Rachel Notley, this lady, Ed Whittingham from Pembina Institute, who gets all this money from the government, and they are happy to work with industry and government to help shape the plan. Now, they come out and they talk about BC's carbon tax. It's good for the economy and the climate. Remember, it's just about repeat. And that was $5 a ton. This lady comes out and says Alberta's carbon tax is a bold move. Sadly, it's not enough. She wants it to be $150 a ton to middle-class families and everybody else. And I'll explain why this will attack middle-class families. Also, the NDP's on board. Of course, the BC Liberals, we know that they were taking that money from schools and hospitals and giving it to people who donated to their campaigns. Here's the Alberta NDP talking about the Conservatives. Mr. Kenney belongs to now a caucus, previously a government that denied the science of climate change and refused to do anything about the issue, and therefore frustrated Alberta's efforts to get our product to Tidewater, frustrated Alberta's efforts to develop our oil sands responsibly. What's responsible? Climate change, carbon tax. That's it. So actually, for these guys who initiate the carbon tax, the more of the oil sands and whatever else they develop, the higher the tax revenue will be for a province called Alberta, which is facing massive problems like all other provinces and jurisdictions that are heavily energy dependent. Just like the European Union and many of these other guys, look, everyone always comes around and says, oh, all the governments are on board. It means the science is real. Of course the governments are on board. They've racked up $217 trillion worth of debt that we're all going to have to pay, and they're looking for a new tax to charge all of the taxpayers. Here's just a quick look at the national debt by countries. Of course these guys are on board. Canada's on board. We're nearly $1 trillion in debt. Why wouldn't these guys want this? So let's take a look at how effective these guys are at saving resources. We're talking about 18 euros to generate €1 in GDP growth. We're not much better over here in North America. So literally what we have is the biggest wasters of resources wanting to take more of our resources to save resources. This is the actual logic. Canada's debt map. This is how governments have borrowed where you live. So when we go down, we're looking at debt per capita per city. Look at these numbers. This is, of course, the reason why all these guys are on board with the carbon tax. These guys are swimming in debt. Your debt that you guys are going to be expected to pay. I mean, look at this stuff. Why else wouldn't they want an air tax? And that air tax moves from carbon, it moves to methane, it moves to everything else. Here we have Ontario, $316 billion in debt, and they want more carbon tax money, even though they've actually overcharged consumers by $37 billion for what? Carbon tax and green energy schemes, paying double and triple the price for green energy. Now, of course, the banks are on board because when you look in their bond funds, what do you see? Oh, the debt of these places like Ontario moving out into the future, into 2045, 2046. These guys are saying, hey, how's the debt going to get paid? We own all this debt. We want you to pay the debt. And of course, the CPP and everybody else owns SNC-Lavalin Group, who will do things like Site C. They also own Suncor Energy, and of course, Royal Bank of Canada, and all the other banks and all these other companies. So should we really believe, here's the BCIMC, they own all the shares, Enbridge, Chevron, all these quote-unquote worst companies on the planet. They own all the shares in them. They're not going to tax them. They never have, they never will. Look at the numbers here. 1.7 trillion per year industry that they own all the shares, stocks, and bonds in. They aren't out to tax them. They've actually never taxed them. That's why all these guys get away scot-free. Here's some of the other interconnections. This is for just the Dakota Access Pipeline. Look at all the banks. I know that's going to be a little bit tougher to see here. We'll just move in on this. All of them are involved. All of them. This is why they want this. I'm not even going to talk about green bonds and all the other things. Now, something interesting happened. And of course, we have back in the day, the oil prices were here. And then all of a sudden, they sort of cratered and they've been sort of, I guess, stabilizing in this area. And for Canada, that's a bit of a problem because our cost to produce, now these numbers vary and they fluctuate as far as who's using what data bracket and whatnot. But look at down here, Russia, Iran, some of these countries, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, so these massive competitors that we have that are producing these oil at much cheaper prices. That's quite a competitive advantage down here, definitely for these guys. All of a sudden, right away, as soon as Trudeau gets in, they're having a meeting like every week about this stuff. We need a carbon tax. And then all of a sudden, Notley comes out here and says, we're not going to have a deal unless the pipeline progress. Remember, we need more pipelines to produce more CO2. which supposedly is killing the place, in order to save the planet from climate change. And then magically what happens is these guys are now looking to recycle the carbon tax revenues back to the oil industry. Well, all these Pembina Institute and all these other guys couldn't see this coming. The politicians, for some reason, they believe couldn't see these coming. The environmental groups that are looking for more of your tax money are actually, maybe, and probably because of all the shares and everything we saw earlier, pushing for a backdoor bailout via these carbon taxes. Oil and gas companies are now among the groups urging the Liberals to stick with the carbon price plan, to push forward. And here we have Ed Whittingham, Pembina Institute, and we have Shell. This is Smart Prosperity. Now, this gentleman here, he used to work for Royal Bank of Canada, former National Chief Assembly of First Nations. Now, First Nations might want to be concerned about the fact that their tax exemptions might get swallowed up in a massive carbon tax scheme, and all of a sudden the PST and GST that they aren't supposed to pay or don't have to pay is going to get swallowed up into a carbon tax. So better be prepared for that if you're First Nations. And the reality really is here that the Alberta NDP carbon tax plan, there's no taxing on any of these companies. I wonder why. So all these taxes are going to fall on the backs of the middle class. And of course, the Liberal government's carbon tax plan provokes anger from the provinces. Yes, of course it does. Because in this democracy, we're not even going to be allowed to vote on this, decide on this or anything. Justin Trudeau is just going to walk in and say, you guys owe billions of dollars. And what's he going to do with that money? He's going to give it to poor countries to help fight climate change. We're poor here. 7 out of 10 people are living paycheck to paycheck. We have all kinds of atrocities going on our First Nations reserves, inner cities. We have opioid crisis. We have people who aren't even eating. We have mortgage bills that are matching energy bills now in Ontario. And of course, we have these guys saying Christy Clark's not doing enough about climate change. Yeah, maybe she's not, because guess what? She wants to take that money and she's going to turn around and say that LNG is going to help reduce wildfires to cut global carbon emissions. Is that even remotely what happens? Remember, she was the same one who was taking all that money and giving it to schools, or taking it from schools and hospitals and giving it to her favorite campaign donators. And what's actually happening now is Fortis, who is a BCIMC investment, an investment of other Canada pension plans, is now turning the tide, and this whole switch is happening that LNG, fracking, and natural gas are renewable, and they fight climate change. And what is that going to mean for them? If all this stuff is earmarked as renewable, well, guess what's going to be happening? They are going to be getting the carbon credits. If someone's getting a credit, someone's getting a debit. And that's all that's happened. Alberta government sets their targets of 30% electricity generated by renewables. What are those renewables going to be coming from? And what is the electrification of those gas fields going to be coming from? Power from Site C, which these places like Pembina and Sierra Club are saying they are against. However, they're actually fighting for these carbon taxes. And this place is going to be a carbon tax clearinghouse for the oil and gas producers to be bailed out on the backs of the middle class. Now, if you're an energy sector worker, you know this is, I'm not attacking oil companies. What I'm saying is, let's just start telling the truth here. We know the truth doesn't matter to these guys. This could be, save Alberta pipelines and BC Site C dam. Yes, it's the carbon tax that's going to do it. It's the tax that you're going to be charged on compounding, and I'll talk about that later on another video, moving forward on every single thing you purchase to bail these bankrupt governments out from the massive amounts of debts that these guys have incurred. So folks, it doesn't matter what is true. It only matters what people believe is true. It's not a political issue. Like, you can see the quotes these guys are saying. These guys are basically telling us that nothing matters. Nothing matters. That's right, nothing matters. It's about paying off the bankers. It's about lying to us to extract more money out of your pockets. Of course, you know us. We're Press for Truth. You can find us on Facebook, Patreon. We ask that you like and share if you want to get this data out to everybody. We really need to start understanding what's going on here. These guys are working behind closed doors to bail themselves out. The bankers want their money, and that's all that's happening here. Thanks for watching.